Welcome back. Video number 5, post-call follow-up sequence. So this is a continuation from the previous videos. This is number 5 in our series. So if you made it this far, congratulations, you're killing it. In this video, we're going to be going through the post-call follow-up sequence. So what happens once someone misses that phone call? It has a 3-tiered follow-up system. So it has 3 touch points. So after they miss the first phone call, they get an SMS, which we showed you with the Twilio integration. The second one is going to call after 2 minutes, I think 2 to 5 minutes. And then after that one, you get another phone call in 24 hours. So it's a system ideally that has a little bit of a fail-safe in the potential that person is unable to pick up that call. So follow along. We're going to go through this. I'm going to go through this from step A to Z. And I'm going to show you my troubleshooting sequences and what I usually do if I'm a little bit stuck. This is going to be pretty raw. So I built this app for Build and Bloom, which is our agency. However, I just kind of cloned these JSONs for the private YouTube, which is a little bit different. So I'm going to be troubleshooting along with it and follow along and let's get started. This is the automation that follows up the call in case that individual doesn't pick up the first time. This is video number 5. So thank you so much for going this far if you actually made it through the sequence. And I'm going to be teaching you how to build the follow-up system. It is going to have a webhook trigger. It's going to find the lead, update call data, check interest. So what happens is ElevenLabs, after the call, it's going to send a set of data into the N8N automation through a webhook, which is the webhook that we originally created. And we created that through ElevenLabs. And once that webhook is sent, we're going to get a phone number, call outcome, duration, call summary. Today, we're just going to go through the call outcome and getting the information that we need so you could perform a post follow-up sequence. And it's going to search records. The base is the real estate lead tracker, which is what we've built. I'm trying to keep it as uniform as possible. And once all of that happens, it's going to update the data on the Airtable, and once the Airtable is updated, it's going to go through our booking interest sequence. I'm going to try and keep it as sweet and short and sweet as possible. And by the time we finish this, you're going to have an automatic call logging system. It's going to have smart conditional logging, instant book links, and it's going to have a complete audio trail. 0 manual work. Once all of this is totally done and the automation is going, ideally you don't have to do anything because it'll just run for you 24/7. But however, you kind of want to be considerate of people's time, and that's why we put the call limits where it doesn't call in the middle of the night. And this would increase your booking rate by about 30%. It's going to save you about 2 hours a day, and you're going to start capturing the data that is going to be very, very handy for you. All right, before we go any further, I'm just going to ask you if you could please like, subscribe, and comment. Share this if it's going to give you value. It will help us a lot, and it gives us a little bit more motivation to keep making these. So we do have a few that we can make. Welcome back. All right, let's get going. So this is the automation that we built last time, just following from where we went to or where we came from. So let's execute this. So when this executes, we'll get a phone call, just to show you the phone call, and we'll stop that. Once the phone call is finished, you should get an execution with the data that you need, which is this one here. So we'll go here, and it should show you the execution, which is here. Look at that. Yep, so it'll go through this automation. So I'm going to work through this with you guys so I can show you how it works. So that one is, obviously I didn't pick up the phone call and my voicemail is full, so it's not going to go through because I've tested 20,000 of these now. But if you test on a normal device, and let's say it's empty, right now it's empty. So because it's empty, it's null. So these are the settings. So I have given you guys the settings in the JSON. However, if in the webhook, what you can do is change this for testing purposes. What I usually do is I'll change these values here. So I'll go JSON and you go call outcome, which will be, so we're going to be looking for the call outcome. So this is the call outcome, and it's this now it says no. However, the way that we've programmed our agent on ElevenLabs through here, which is the post call follow-up, it'll give you this set of data here. So the value right now it's no. You can usually change this. Let's say if you go human for testing purposes, we usually test it through that. We'll change the value there. But right now, let's just leave it as no. So just in case nothing comes up. No, we're just doing this for testing purposes. And we'll go save. And if we run this, it should go through the last one. And it goes through there, 1 minute. So it waits 1 minute after the first call. After the minute, it goes through the ElevenLabs credentials again. I will delete this so you guys will not be able to look at it. That is okay. So obviously, you've got this error here, and that error there is primarily due to this phone number here. So you can paste that there. The easy way is to just kind of drag and drop, which that's what makes an pretty good. It can be pretty intuitive, but at the same time, you kind of have to also use a little bit of conditional logic. So when you're looking for stuff, you have to think about what the result of C if A occurs, kind of a little bit. And with time, you will be able to figure out what you want to do and how you want your nodes to work, or how you particularly want your workflow to work. Airtable is generally meant to be a UI interface for clients. However, it can be a modality, or it can be not really a modality, it could be a platform in which that's very friendly for you to use for storing data. However, if you want to store data for the purpose of for your own purpose, it's probably better for you to use a platform like Superbase. That way you can sort your own data. So you guys get to see the troubleshooting steps, so which is here, and I'll just drag this here. And that's that one. And it should send an error. Sorry. Should send a message, which is that one there. And let's see, where are we here? Yeah, that should be good. And last but not least, so we have this problem here, this error there. So we will fix it. Not from, we'll go all the way back here and put that there. And the problem with this is here, when you have credential errors usually mean like there's a problem with your API, or let's say that you're in this sort of situation where you're creating a new workflow for another using Airtable. However, you haven't really changed the tables or the bases correctly, or the credentials connected to the particular account is incorrect. That's when you're going to get credential errors. And like I said, there's quite a few ways that you can get around this. If you're very, very new and you're a little bit confused, or you're trying to learn or understand what these particular errors mean, the easiest way, I'm pretty sure Comet is free, is you can just ask your assistant. I use Comet because I do find it quite handy. Some people use Atlas. Otherwise, you're always welcome to use ChatGPT. You just copy and paste this to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will be able to give you the solution to it. Always remember to click save. Even though ChatGPT can give you a solution, I do tend to think that it's also very, very important for you to try and understand the particular reason said error is coming. Because if you understand it, you kind of build a knowledge base in your mind slowly over time, and it just helps you go through these things significantly quicker if you have a reference point when you see certain amount of errors or certain errors. When you see things like credentials, or you see things like values or authentication error, stuff like that, it makes things a little bit easier if you can understand what's actually going on. So we're going to test the second tier of the automation. So this should move contact status to call to. So when contact status goes to call to, it should update your Airtable as well. So it updates your status to call to, and your Airtable is here, gets updated to call to, and contacted, call to, the SMS transcript. Let's put in last contact, and created date. Usually, we'll find when the lead is actually uploaded in there. However, so let's look at this. So last contact, what we can do is we'll use this, or what you can also do, you can drag and drop that, or you can just go now. You can go now. Oh, that's not what I'm trying to do. Sorry, you go expression first. We've got to go expression and go now. And that will update the time based on the current moment in which the workflow is occurring, which is of value. So we've got a call to error, which is over here. And the call to error says document ID is not found, which is that document. That's right. Document ID is not found, therefore entailing, because also, remember something, guys. So this is currently set to be a dynamic value. So it'll find the value from the webhook. Let's say you have multiple different agents making the phone calls for you, and you're using the same post-call follow-up sequence. You would be using a dynamic entry, which is this JSON, okay? If you want to hard code it, which I'm going to hard code it right now, this is the one that we'll be currently using. You just copy and paste the value. So the difference is you have to kind of remember, and something that is important to note, when you put things as an expression with the squiggly lines, it's dynamic. When I say dynamic, means the value of that is determined by a previous node, or it's determined by a previous factor, or it's determined within the workflow. Whereas if you put a specific number or a specific value in there, it is always going to call, or is always going to make the node call using that value. It is never going to change. Ideally, it's just hard coded. And this should work now. Cool. And there you go. So that's working now. So it is good for you to try and understand these errors. But like I said, just if you have an error and you don't understand it, just go through your ChatGPT or whatever AI that you use and let it and ask it the question of, okay, what is this error? Where does it come from? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So let's go execute again. Cool. So that's that one. Let's stop that because we don't want it to go through that one. That's true. It's contacted. This is call 1. We never updated this, so we'll go here. We'll go unpinned data. We'll go call 2. So the reason I'm doing this, it's just instead of us continuously moving or continuously restarting the workflow, you're just mimicking call 2, which is what we did from the Airtable. I tend to find that this is a significantly quicker process for you to go through in comparison to doing the process or doing the testing over and over and over, which is tedious. For the sake of keeping this short and sweet, I'm going to make the adjustments using the JSON. I'm not actually going to go through every single one of these. Okay. It is of enormous value for you guys to robustly test your workflows and ensure that every single of these routing rules will go through and do actually work properly prior to you shipping this out. Because I have had moments where you do test them once or twice and you think that it's going to work properly and it just doesn't. It just becomes like a huge pain in the butt. Like I said, I'm just going to go through into this and work this through with you guys. So this is lead automation, lead management. You go leads. This is exactly what it means. So it's perhaps credentials, invalid ones. So I'm just changing these values. ID is here. And if it's unreachable, you're going to go status. Hold on, where are we? Contact status unreachable. It's just easier. And that should work now. Cool, and that works. So this is contact status call 2. So that one on the false branch, which it is correct. However, we're trying to test this particular flow here, right? So if you're trying to test this particular flow, this value needs to be correct. All right, so as you guys change your values on your Airtable, this is set on a previous workflow that we actually built out. This is a clone that I created from scratch specifically for this YouTube. So there are some things that are going to be a little bit incorrect. The benefit of going through this with you guys is you just get to see the troubleshooting and you get to see this stuff raw. And I think it's of value, to be honest. Like there's some things that I wish someone did go through with me, or like as you go through, it becomes like a massive head F word as you're figuring it out yourself. But it becomes pretty easy. I'm not going to say easy, but your process of building logic becomes more in tune. So you can kind of align the logic a little bit easier. Because there are moments where like you go through Claude or Gemini or whatever, and it will tell you a specific sequence of process that it wants you to go through. However, when you actually think about that logic sequence, the logic sequence actually doesn't make sense, and it actually is a significantly longer set of procedure instead of you going on a very direct route. Sometimes I do find that like it's very valuable for you to try to think through the logic. So kind of map it out in your mind first, how you want it, or map it out on paper, whatever, or just map it out somewhere. So when you do get to a point where you're getting the LLMs to help you work through it, or you can literally just ask Claude to make you the automation. A good thing to take note of is generally you want to try and find the value closest to the node that you're trying to configure. because the further the value, I tend to think or tend to find that the more room for error there is. So always attempt and find the closest value to what you actually are trying to get to. And let us go through this again. So first call capture. On that side, let's see if that's correct. Third call, that is correct. And let's execute its workflow. Cool. 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 So this is just a filter node for best time to call. And I will stop that actually, and I'll turn this on. So this is the up until 4 p.m. You don't want to, yeah, like I said, you just don't want to kind of be inundating people. Calling too many people without and at reasonable hours. It's the same problem, which means it is this one. Like I said, it really depends on you. There's some things that it's good to have dynamic variables, like not good. It is essential for you to have dynamic variables on. And there's some things that you just need. Sometimes it's good for you to hard code. What else? Let's do there. Oh, yeah, cool. Phone number. Cool. And save. Go. Call number 3. And same error, credentials. Always try and use record ID when it comes to Airtable, because what the record ID is, it's a number or a set of, or a number sequence that relates to a particular row in a particular base, which is very, very useful. We're doing a whole bunch of testing, so that's the reason all of these values are here. Quick little trip, you'll go to just delete, and then you delete all selected records. So a record ID is a number sequence or a sequence of letters and numbers that relates particularly to this row. The reason I prefer to use record ID is it prevents things from doubling up. If you use phone number, and let's say that you get a lead of similar with the same phone number. You know, some people fill out the lead forms multiple times. It becomes significantly frustrating because it'll update those multiple leads. And you also do have to be aware about your limits, token limits. I believe it's token limits. Or rate limits. Rate limit it's called. Cool. So voicemail attempt 3, you'll go contact status, call 3. Call 3. And it should work now. That'll work. This is a formatter. You don't really need this, but if you're somewhere where, if you're going to be using WhatsApp, it's good to have. But if you do use WhatsApp, you would have to change these values. Okay. So remember, guys, if you're going to use this particular template, ensure that you change this text. So hi there. Okay. And Slack. Cool. This is John. Jim's mowing. Just following up. On your inquiry. Cool. So if you want to, so when you're typing this out, a good thing to note is /. So /, that means it's going to be a new line. right? So hi and slash new line. This is dot 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 and slash dot dot dot. Cool. And this would be text number 2. So that should work now. Cool. And that's sent out. And cool. So that's also sent out. Oh, that's also been sent out. Cool. And let's move on. Cool. See, that's what I put now. Follow up sent. So conversation stage is no longer initial, it's engaged. And you go here. And this is Superbase, which is just really handy to have. So session ID, where we have an error in our Airtable. No, not Airtable. Is it here? Oh, no, it must be in this Airtable. Error, expression node. This node is executed. Consider rewiring nodes for execution first. Node table executed. Yeah. So what this is telling us is this node here hasn't been executed. So you can, to prevent this from happening, what you can do is you can just remove this and go with this one instead. I'll also show you, which will also give you invalid permission. So we'll change this one now. And just fix this one here. Leads and the ID is here. And that should work now. So those are just kind of your troubleshooting steps that you just take along and go along. Because you know that the previous node had the same problem, this is most likely going to have the same problem because you're extracting the same value of the same node. However, there's also something else wrong with this. This is requesting session ID. So the session ID, usually you want to use this, which is session ID. And you can also add, okay, so we'll, do we have lead ID? We have lead ID. We can go direction and and that will have all those rows fixed. Did we fix this one? I believe we did. So let's go here. Let's fix this. Okay, let's go call 3. Call 3. Save. And test. Execute workflow. Cool. Unreachable. And another one that you could do, if you go over here, and we need to test failed. So we can edit. Okay, so you need to ensure that you test every single one of these outcomes and values. And the best way to do that is just to edit the JSON from the webhook. Once you edit them and test every single path within the workflow, then you can do the robust testing of calling and ensuring that every single one of them goes through. I'm just going to show you how to just do one or a couple. So you copy failed. But when we're configuring the ElevenLabs webhook, Remember that we did set these specific parameters. And then you're going to go into edit and go to call outcome. So data collection results, call outcome, data collection ID, call, and you'll switch this value, enter failed, you go save, and then you execute the workflow. Cool. And there's that one. So remember, we did turn this node off. However, so once the first call is made, it's going to wait 1 minute. I said this one is 1 minute. However, this is primarily set for testing. Usually you want to put it at around maybe 2 or 3 minutes for it to make the second call. Just give it a little bit of breathing room, and it should be able to make that phone call for you. And then go through all these outcomes and ensure that every single one of the paths within the workflow works correctly. But once the paths work correctly, then you can go back to ElevenLabs and ensure that the webhook is sending out the appropriate data accordingly. However, that is significantly easier to troubleshoot once the full workflow is working correctly to your specifications and to your needs. Once you've tested all the paths, it is significantly easier for you to make slight modifications on ElevenLabs to give you the correct outcome in comparison to doing every single call every single time. If you do it that way, it's going to take you significantly longer to test every single path and every single workflow in comparison to just doing it on here. So ensure that all of these are tested. Every single one of these paths is correctly tested and configured. And once you do that, you should be all good to go. Thank you so much, guys. Like and subscribe, and we'll continue making these videos.